Greetings, Michael Didier here. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, we're continuing our adventure in Torah. You know, there's a lot in Torah. No, there's a lot in Yasher that supplements what is missing in Torah. Oh man, it answers so many questions for us if we will just be patient and listen and see some things that we would otherwise have missed totally. I'm going to try and communicate some of those things today as we go through Yasher. You know, we covered Yasher last week. We did actually Genesis 37. We're on it right now. This is the story of Joseph going down to Egypt. Yasher, this is 27 verses, 36 verses. And Yasher's got 3.5 chapters about this same portion. And, you know, understanding the whole and how Yehovah is working in the lives of his people, especially Joseph in this case today, really touches my heart. There's been times in my life that I felt like I've been forsaken. It's kind of where Joseph is at right now. He feels like he's been forsaken. His family has rejected him completely. And now he's on his way to Egypt. I think I'm going to call this the road to Egypt. Last week, 37, we covered a little bit of it. His brothers hated him. He had dreams. They didn't like that. His father sent him, shalaked him to go to Shechem to check on his brothers. They sent back the coat of many colors, dipped in blood, to trick their father, because they had betrayed their father and sold him to the Midianites. Do you remember what we talked about last week? They threw him in a pit. The Midianites came by and found him in the pit. They were looking for water. They found him in the pit. Hey, what are you doing down there? They pulled him up. They were bringing him to Egypt. Well, on their way there, they went past the brothers. The brothers saw what is happening and said, where are you going with our boy? He says, what are you talking about? He's your boy. He's in the pit. You left him. Well, remember, it was Simeon who stepped up because they were coming to swords. The Midianites actually drew swords. Remember, who are the Midianites? They're sons of Abraham through Keturah. They drew their swords. The only one that stood up was Simon. He gave a big teruah, a roar, like a lion. Scared him half to death. It shook the earth. They submitted completely. In fact, they had sell us the boy then. So they bought the boy, Joseph, for 20 shekels of silver. Well, they left. Remember, they were going north, towards Gilead. And coming from Gilead was the Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites, because the Midianites repented of what they had done, they said, why were these guys with this Hebrew child? Child is 17 years old. Why is he with these 17-year-old? Why is he with this child? And what if they think that we sold this child? And so they decided it was a better idea to sell him again. So they sold him to the Ishmaelites. Now the Ishmaelites are going down to Egypt. We're going to see today that the Ishmaelites are going to sell him to yet another person. But let me just go through a little bit of Torah here so I can bring some things to your memory. The boys wanted to kill him. They threw him in a pit. We just talked about that. the Ishmaelites. It says, and they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted up their eyes and they saw the Ishmaelites. Then it says the Midianite traders passed by. Look what it says. Then the Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers, they added the brothers. It says the Midianites passed by and pulled Joseph and lifted him out of the pit. They're the ones that sold him to, no, it says, and sold him to the Midianites. Yeah, they did sell him to the Midianites, but they left out the whole portion of the interaction, the brouhaha, between Jacob's seed, the brothers that threw their other brother into the pit, and the Midianites. They left it out entirely. We got to see that in Yasher. Well, it was Reuben who said, put him in the pit. And he planned to take him out of the pit and bring him back to his father later. But before he was gone, the kids, the other brothers, decided that they were going to sell him to the Ishmaelites. Again, before they could do it, the Midianites got him and kind of ruined their plans, but that all worked out for them as well. Well, then they send the tunic. This is Issachar's great idea, to send the tunic to their father. And they sent their fastest runner. We're going to see today that it is, who is it? Naphtali. Really fast. So they're sending it to their dad. And of course, he tore his clothes and it says that his sons and his daughters, this is Torah, his sons and his daughters. Did he have more daughters? Maybe some of the sons had wives and even children. I think we might just see that today. Let's look closely for that. Now at the bottom it says, for I shall go down to the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Then in the last verse it says, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar. How does that even work? The last persons that had him was the Ishmaelites. So now it says the Midianites sold him to Potiphar in Egypt. There are some mistakes in Torah. There's always things that we've got to deal with. And having Yasher is going to put a whole new light on what we're seeing in Torah. I hope you love it today and see Yehovah's hand in Joseph's life. Let's go to Yasher. Oh, before we start, just a reminder, Joseph is 17 when he's going down to Egypt. Jacob is 108. Remember, it's 105 when they fought the 7 battles against all the Canaanites and the Amorites. It was 106 when they went back to Canaan, and now we're at 108 when Joseph is being carried off to Egypt, and Isaac is 168. Isaac is 151 years older than Joseph. Isn't that interesting? Jacob, of course, is 91 years older. He had it when he was 91 years old. And 91 plus 60, the difference between Jacob and Isaac's life is the 168. Did I have that right? 68 seems like it should be 158. I'm going to stick with 168 for right now. We'll check it as we go. So we're starting here. Last thing we did was read Genesis 37. And Joseph heard that the Ishmaelites were proceeding to Egypt. This is Joseph. He's on the horse now. Joseph lamented and Joseph heard that the Israelites were proceeding to Egypt. And Joseph lamented and wept at this thing that he was to be far removed from the land of Canaan, from his father. And he wept bitterly whilst he was riding on the camel. And one of them, their men, observed him and made him go down from the camel and walk on foot. And notwithstanding, Joseph continued to cry and weep and said, Avi, Avi, my father, my father. Isn't it interesting that he's so concerned about his father? And the Ishmaelites rose up and smote Joseph upon the cheek. And he still continued to weep, and Joseph was fatigued in the road and was unable to proceed on account of the bitterness of his soul. And they all smote him and afflicted him on the road, and they terrified him in order that he might cease from weeping. It almost sounds like child trafficking in a sense. Well, look what this says. And Yehovah saw the ambition of Joseph and his trouble. No, what he saw was the affliction of Joseph and his trouble. You'll see why I say that in just a moment. And Yehovah brought down upon those men darkness and confusion, and the hand of every one that smote him became withered. This is Yehovah, again, acting on behalf of his chosen son, Joseph. Yehovah has a providential meeting. How do I even say? To save his family in the future. It's going to be many years in the future, 12, maybe even 30 years in the future. I'd have to look at my timeline to see that. But he's going to save his family. Not only his family, he's going to save many of the people of the earth by what Yehovah is doing right now. And they said to each other, what is this thing that Elohim has done to us, or done to us in the road? And they knew not that this befell them on account of Joseph. And the men proceeded on the road, and they passed along the road of Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. Ephrath. This is Bethlehem. Here's what it says in, here, I'll open it. This is what it says in Genesis 48. But as for me, when I came out of Padam, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way. When there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, I buried her there on the way to Ephrath. That is Bethlehem. So that's where Bethlehem is Ephrath. I've got a map here. I just want you to kind of see what's going on here. Did I open it? I'm sure I did. There it is. Here is, the boys were down here. Here's Dothan. They're probably going this way through Shechem. This is the Ridge Trail, the High Ridge Trail, or Central Ridge Trail. Here is Bethel, right here. His dad, Bethlehem is right here. This is Ephrath. His dad is just here in Hebron. What is the distance between Bethlehem and Hebron? 12 miles. Strikes me as funny that Rachel wasn't buried in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. Why? I guess it was because they had such a large entourage traveling to see their dad at that time. Remember, Jacob was 100 years old at that time. Oh, that's what it was. Jacob was 100 years old. He stayed with his dad for 5 years and then left. And it was at 106 that they had the battle with the 7 cities of the Amorites, or the 7 cities of the Canaanites, let's say. Remember, an Amorite is a Canaanite. So now here it is 3 years later, and Jacob is being taken away. Jacob is down here. Joseph is being taken away. Jacob is down here in Hebron. He went all the way up to see his brothers. They sold him, and now these guys are going right past the dad. He's going to talk about going back. the next affliction that he's going to get. Well, let's take a look at it, because I think it's interesting to see. It seems like it would have been easily done, sold to his dad, but they didn't want to sell him to his dad. So here we had, and they passed along the road of Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. And Joseph reached his mother's grave, and Joseph hastened and ran to his mother's grave and fell upon the grave and wept. And Joseph cried aloud upon his mother's grave. And he said, Ami, Ami, I think it's Ami. Ami, yeah. Ami, Ami, my mother, thou who didst give me birth, awake now and arise and see thy son, how he has been sold for a slave, and no one to pity him. Oh, rise and see thy son, weep with me on account of my troubles, and see the heart of my brethren. Arouse, my mother, arouse, arise. I think arise is what they're talking about. Arise, my mother, arise, awake from thy sleep for me, and direct thy battle against my brethren. How they always say, oh, this word, oh, it's never in the Torah. I'm going to say it. Oh, how have they stripped me of my coat and sold me already twice for a slave, and separated me from my father, and there is no one to pity me. Arise and lay thy cause against them before Elohim, and see who Elohim will justify in the judgment, and whom he will condemn. Rise, my mother, arise, awake from thy sleep, and see my father how his soul is with me this day, and comfort him and ease his heart. Here he is being taken off to Egypt, and he's concerned about his dad. And Joseph continued to speak these words, and Joseph cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave, and he ceased speaking, and from the bitterness of his heart he became still as stone upon the grave. And Joseph heard a voice speaking to him from beneath the ground, which answered him with bitterness of heart, and with a voice of weeping and praying in these words. He's hearing a voice. Where's it coming from? Is it his mom that can't talk? I think it's a vision. And she says, my son, Beni, Joseph, I have heard thy voice. I have heard the voice of thy weeping, and the voice of thy lamentation. I have seen thy tears. I know thy troubles, my son, and it grieves me for thy sake, and abundant grief is added to my grief. Now therefore, my son, Joseph, my son, hope to Yehovah. Isn't that what he needs to do? Hope to Yehovah. He's in charge of this situation. And wait for him, and do not fear, for Yehovah is with thee. He will deliver thee from all trouble. You know, Rachel, she always seemed to be the one in the household, Rachel, who saw and understood spiritual things. She knew when the blessing was going to be given to the wrong kid. And she orchestrated it so that the right kid would get the blessing, as Yehovah had planned. Isaac, what's his problem? Well, here she is now saying, for Yehovah is with thee. He will deliver thee from all trouble. And he will. Rise, my son. Go down to Egypt with thy masters. Do not fear, for Yehovah is with thee, my son. And she continued to speak like unto these words unto Joseph. And she was still, and then she stopped. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at it. And he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him. I wonder if they happened to take a stop there. Otherwise, how did he get to spend so much time on the grave? I think they must have had a way over, a pit stop, weeping upon the grave, and his anger was kindled against him. And he drove him from there, and he smote him and cursed him. And Joseph said unto the men, may I find grace in your sight? It's almost like he's praying, may I please find grace in your sight? And take me back to my father's house. He's so near to his father's house right now, 12 miles away. And he will give you abundance of riches. Well, what did his mom just say? Trust in Yehovah. Go down to Egypt with thy masters. What's he doing? Totally different. He didn't listen to what his mom had to say. And they answered him, art thou not a slave? And where is thy father? And if thou had a father, thou wouldst not already twice have been sold for a slave for so little value, 20 shekels of silver. And their anger was still roused against him. And they continued to smite him and to chastise him. And Joseph wept bitterly. Well, now look what it says. And Yehovah saw Joseph's ambition. No, he saw his affliction. And Yehovah smote those men and chastised them. Yehovah is fighting for Joseph. But Joseph did not even have to pray to get help from Yehovah. It just came when Joseph was in his will. And Yehovah caused darkness to envelop them upon the earth. And lightning flashed and thunder roared. The earth shook at the voice of the thunder and the mighty wind. And the men were terrified and knew not where they should go when Yehovah intercedes for his people. It grows dark. The lightning thunders. We're going to see this again. It's left out of Torah. Why? Is it possible that the publishers, and I think this goes back many, many hundreds of years, have changed or deleted some of the things from the scriptures? We'll see. You know, we got the books from the Vatican right now. We're going to see some new things come to light. Be very interesting to see what we find out. And the beasts and the camels stood still. And they led them, but they would not go. They smote them, and they crouched upon the ground. And the men said to each other, what is this that Elohim has done to us? You know, these are sons of Abraham. They know Yehovah. They know who their Elohim is. I wonder if it says the Elohim has done to us. What are our transgressions? And what are our sins that this thing has thus befallen us? Wake up, guys. And one of them answered and said to them, perhaps on account of the sin of afflicting the slave has this thing happened this day to us. Now therefore implore him strongly to forgive us, and then we shall know on whose account this evil befalleth us. And if Elohim shall have compassion over us, then we shall know all this cometh to us on account of, look at it says again, on account of the sin of afflicting this slave. They were just saying, what is our sin? Well, they knew what it was. And the men did so. And they supplicated Joseph and pressed him to forgive them. And they said, we have sinned to Yehovah and to thee. Now therefore vouchsafe to request of Elohim that he shall put away this death from among us, for we have sinned to him. And Joseph did according to their words, and Yehovah hearkened to Joseph. And Yehovah put away the plague which he had inflicted upon these men on account of Joseph. And the beast rose up from the ground, and they conducted themselves. And they went on, and the raging storm abated, and the earth became tranquilized. And the men proceeded on their journey to go down to Egypt. And the men knew that this evil had befallen them on account of Joseph. Do you think they're going to be nicer to him on the rest of the trip? I think so. And they said to each other, behold, we know that it is on account of his affliction that this evil befell us. Now, therefore, why shall we bring this death upon our souls? Let us hold counsel what we should do with the slave. So now they're reevaluating. Remember, that's what the Midianites did. You know, it doesn't look good. The things that we're doing, the deeds that we're doing in taking Joseph to Gilead, doesn't look good. He's a Hebrew child. We don't want to get in trouble. So when they saw the Israelites, they sold him. They're now reevaluating whether or not they should be going down to Egypt with Joseph. And one answered and said, surely he told us to bring him back to his father. Now therefore come, let us take him back, and we will go to the place that he will tell us, and take from his family the price that we gave for him, and we will go away. I think what happened is they continued through Hebron. They're on their way to Beersheba, and this is when this is going to be happening. And they don't want to go back. They're probably 20 miles away. Too far. And then we will go away. And one answered again and said, behold, this counsel is very good, but we cannot do so, for the way is very far from us, and we cannot go out of our road. And one more answered and said, I wonder how many there were. One more answered and said unto them, this is the counsel to be adopted. We will swerve not from it. Behold, we are this day going to Egypt. And when we shall have come to Egypt, we will sell him there at a high price, and we will be delivered of this evil. See, they understand that there's evil going on right now. They want to be delivered of it, but they can't do it with Jacob, with Joseph, so with them. And this thing pleased the men, and they did so, and they continued their journey to Egypt with Joseph. Now we're going to change gears. We'll come back to these guys very shortly, but we're going to change gears, and we're going to talk about what Jacob's seed, his brothers, Joseph's brothers, are going to do now that he's been sold and taken away. Remember, they wanted to have him disappear into the wilderness of the peoples. And that's kind of what would have happened. But Yehovah is working on his behalf. And when Jacob's seed had sold their brother Joseph to the Midianites, their heart, remember, I told you, they sold it to the Midianites. They didn't sell it to the Ishmaelites like Torah says. They sold it to the Midianites. Midianites sold them to the Israelites. Their hearts were smitten on account of him. So now they're having regrets. And they repented of their acts, and they sought for him to bring him back, but they couldn't find him. And Reuben returned to the pit in which Joseph, remember this is even in Torah. Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. Reuben returned to the pit. Did I say Joseph? No, I did say Reuben. And Reuben returned to the pit in which Joseph had been put in order to lift him out and restore him to his father. And Reuben stood by the pit, and he heard not a word, and he called out to Joseph, Joseph! And no one answered or uttered a word. And Reuben said, Joseph has died through fright, or some serpent has caused his death. And Reuben descended into the pit. Look at that. Reuben, he's the eldest brother, remember, probably 24 years old, descended into the pit. And he searched for Joseph and could not find him in the pit. And he came out again, and Reuben tore his garments. And he said, the child is not there. And how shall I reconcile my father about him if he be dead? Yes, he feels a great responsibility being the eldest child of the household, eldest son. And he went to his brethren and found them grieving on account of Joseph and counseling together how to reconcile their father about him. And Reuben said unto his brethren, I came to the pit, and behold, Joseph is not there. What shall we say to our father? For my father will only seek the lad from me. And his brethren answered him, saying, Thus and thus we did. The Midianites came, they took him out of the pit, then they fought with us, and we sold him. I wonder if they even knew that the Ishmaelites had got him. Remember, the Ishmaelites are also a son of Abraham through Hagar. And we now sit to seek a pretext, how we can reconcile our father to it. Can you imagine? They're going to live with this potentially the rest of their life. It's only going to be 15 years, 20 years. But potentially, for as far as they know right now, it's going to be the rest of their life. They're going to live with this thought that they sold their brother into slavery. Can you imagine? And then lied to their father? Wow. And Reuben said unto them, What is this you have done to bring the gray hairs of our father in sorrow to the grave? This is exactly what it said in Torah. Second to the last verse, chapter 37. For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning. And the thing is not good that you have done. And Reuben sat with them, and they all rose up and swore to each other not to tell this thing unto Jacob. And they all said, the man who tells this to our father or to his household, I have to wonder, the man, here we're talking about the man who tells our father or his household. I think the pronoun goes with the man, not with the father. Is it possible that some of these brothers had already taken wives and had children? I think it is. Or who will report this to any of the land seed? We will all rise up against him and slay him with the sword. Don't tell anybody. And Jacob's seed feared each other in this manner. From the youngest, who's the youngest? Zebulun is the youngest, probably close to Joseph's age, maybe 18, probably 17. They may have been born in the same year. To the oldest, 24, Reuben. And no one spoke a word, and they concealed the thing in their hearts. And they afterwards sat down to determine and invent something to say unto their father, Jacob, concerning all these things. And Issachar said unto them, Here is an advice for you. If it seems good in your eyes to do this thing, take the coat which belongeth to Joseph, and tear it, kill a kid of the goats, and dip it in the blood, and send it to our father. When he sees it, he will say, An evil beast has devoured him. This is what they're hoping he's going to jump to conclusions of. Therefore tear ye this coat, and behold, his blood will be upon the coat. And by your doing this, we shall be free from our father's murmurings. Our father's murmurings. Do you think their dad might have some doubts as to what's actually happening? Murmurings. And Issachar's advice pleased them, and they hearkened unto him, and they did according to the word of Issachar. which he had counseled them. And they hastened and took Joseph's coat and tore it. And they killed the kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood of the kid, and then trampled it in the dust. And they sent the coat to their father Jacob by the hand of Naphtali. Told you, Naphtali, the fastest runner. We're going to see that later on in Torah. And they commanded him to say these words. We had gathered in the cattle. This is their story. We're sticking to it, the narrative. We had gathered in the cattle and had come as far as the road of Shechem. And further, when we found this coat upon the road in the wilderness, dipped in blood and in dust. Now therefore know whether it be thy son's coat. Is this his coat, Dad? They know it's his coat. And Naphtali went, and he came to his father, and he gave him the coat. And he spoke unto him all the words which his brethren had commanded him. And Jacob saw Joseph's coat, and he knew it. He fell upon his face to the ground and became still as stone. And he afterwards rose up and cried out with a loud and weeping voice, and he said, It is the coat of Beni Yosef. And Jacob hastened and sent one of his servants to his sons, who went to them and found them coming along the road with the flocks. And the sons and Jacob's seed came to their father about evening, and behold, their garments were torn, and dust was upon their heads. Tore their clothes, but dust on their heads. It's a mourning process. So they are mourning for their father, apparently, when he sent the messenger to them. No, they already knew. They already knew, because it was them that had the idea. So they must have come probably before they even left Shechem. They put dust on their head and tore their clothes. What a ruse. And they found their father crying and weeping with a loud voice. And Jacob said to his sons, listen to what he says, tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? Do you think Jacob had some suspicions? He knew his sons were not happy with Joseph. Tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? I think that is an interesting declaration on Jacob's part. Something doesn't add up. And they answered their father Jacob, saying, we were coming along this day after the flocks had been gathered in, and we came as far as the city of Shechem by the road in the wilderness. And we found this coat filled with blood on the ground, and we knew it, and we sent unto thee if thou couldst know it. Yeah, they knew it. Of course they knew it, and they knew he'd know it. And Jacob heard the words of his sons, and he cried out with a loud voice. And he said, it is the coat of Beni, my son. An evil beast has devoured him. That's exactly the conclusion that they wanted him to jump to. Joseph is rent in pieces. For I sent him. Look at this. I sent him. Shalak. I shalaked him. They sent back, they shalaked the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father. He sent his best, they sent his worst. I sent him this day to see whether it was well with thee, with you. And, Mosey, that's enough, honey. Hey, no, be quiet. See if it is well with you and well with the flocks, and to bring me word again from you. And he went as I commanded him, and this has happened to him this day, whilst I thought my son was with you. Sorry, I'm babysitting today. Hey, lay down. Lay down. Enough. Good boy. You be quiet. And when Jacob heard their words, he again cried out aloud, and he rose up and tore his clothes, tore his garments, and put sackcloth on his loins. And he wept bitterly, and he mourned, and lifted up his voice in weeping, and exclaimed and said these words. Jacob tore his clothes, sackcloth on his waist, mourned for many days. Here's his words. Joseph, my son, Joseph, I sent thee after the welfare of thy brethren, and behold, thou hast been torn in pieces through my hand. He's blaming himself for sending his son. Through my hand, this has happened to my son. Can you imagine what the brothers are thinking right now? That their dad is blaming himself for what they did? So egregious. It grieves me for thee, Joseph, my son. It grieves me for thee. How sweet wast thou to me during life, and now how exceedingly bitter is thy death. Oh, that I had died in thy stead, Joseph, my son, for it grieves me sadly for thee, my son. Oh, my son, Joseph, my son, where art thou? And where hast thou been drawn? Arise from thy place, and come and see my grief for thee, oh, my son, Joseph. Come now and number the tears gushing from my eyes down my cheek, and bring them up before Yehovah, that his anger may turn from me. Oh, Joseph, my son, how didst thou fall? By the hand of one by whom no one had fallen from the beginning of the world unto this day. For thou hast been put to death by the smiting of an enemy, inflicted with cruelty. But surely I know that this has happened to thee on account of the multitude of my sins. He's again blaming himself. Oh, the poor man. Arise now, and see how bitter is my trouble for thee, my son. Although I did not rear thee, nor fashion thee, nor give thee breath and soul, but it was Yehovah who formed thee, and built thy bones, and covered them with flesh, and breathed into thy nostrils the breath of life, and then he gave him unto me. You know, no one can know this kind of loss, this kind of grief, until it happens to them. This is how I grieved when my family was taken from me. I felt just like Joseph. And, it's been, 2005? It's been almost 20 years. Jacob's only going to be in prison for 12 years. But boy, you sure feel alone when you get separated from your family. Now, truly, and this is his father. This isn't even Joseph. This is his dad's grief. Now, truly, Elohim, who gave thee unto me, he has taken thee from me, and such then has befallen thee. And Jacob continued to speak like unto these words concerning Joseph, and he wept bitterly, and he fell to the ground and became still. And all Jacob's seed, seeing their father's trouble, they repented of what they had done, and they also wept bitterly. Remember, it was Joseph's idea. It was Judah's idea. When they dropped him into the pit, it said they went away from the pit about a bow shot to discuss what they were going to do with him. And it was Judah who saw the Ishmaelites coming and suggested that they sell them to the Ishmaelites. Now here's Judah again. We're seeing that Judah is taking a prominent role in the family. Remember, Judah is third born. No, fourth born. No, maybe third. Reuben, Simeon, maybe it's Judah, and then Levi, or is it Levi and Judah? I think it's Judah and then Levi. I think he's third born. So here's Judah now. And Judah rose up and lifted his father's head upon the ground. This was his big idea. And placed it upon his lap. And he wiped his father's tears from his cheeks. And Judah wept an exceedingly great weeping while his father's head was reclined upon his lap, still as stone. And Jacob's seed saw their father's trouble, and they lifted up their voices and continued to weep. And Jacob was yet lying upon the ground, still as stone. You know, you don't see any of this in Torah. And all his sons and his servants seed, children, rose up and stood round him to comfort him, and he refused to be comforted. Look at what this says in Torah. I thought this was very interesting. Let me open it. Here it is. It says, and all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. Isn't that interesting? Sons and daughters. Is it possible that Jacob had daughters besides Dinah that aren't mentioned? And Dinah's only mentioned because she got taken by Shechem and raped at 10. I think it's interesting. For I shall go down to the grave in mourning. The boys are 18 to 24. And the whole household of Jacob rose up and mourned a great mourning on account of Joseph and their father's trouble. And intelligence reached Isaac. The word reached to Isaac that Joseph had died. It's very interesting. Remember, Isaac is still alive in chapter 37. This is chapter 37. Even though it looked like he died at the end of Genesis 35. How old is Isaac right now? How old is Jacob right now? We know Joseph is 17. And he is still going to live until Joseph rules in Egypt. Well, I found out today he's going to live until Joseph interprets the dream of Pharaoh at 29 years old. 12 years from now. Now, the days of Isaac, this is what it says in 35 of Torah. Now, the days of Isaac were 180 years. So Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. I told you he didn't die. I told you there was many years between the 100 that when they came to Hebron and when Jacob is actually going to die at 180. How old Isaac is going to die at 180. Look at this. I thought this was interesting. Is this? Yeah, I guess this is it. This is Yasher 47. We are in Yasher 43 right now, I think. It says, and when Isaac had finished commanding Jacob and his seed, he gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people. And Jacob and Esau fell on their face in the face of their father Isaac. Jacob and Esau. Esau fell on his face. That's interesting. And they wept. And Isaac was 180 years old when he died in the land of Canaan in Hebron. And his sons carried him to the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the children, from Hesed, for a possession of a burial place. Remember, Isaac is going to die at 180. He's 151 right now. He's going to be around for a while. So it says, the intelligence reached Isaac, the son of Abraham, the father of Jacob. And he wept bitterly on account of Joseph, and he and all his household. And he went from the place where he dwelt in Hebron, and they're in Hebron. What's up with that? It's a place where he dwelt in Hebron, and his men with him. And he comforted Jacob, his son, and refused to be comforted. Remember, Jacob's in Hebron right now also, so they're just going to a different part of town. But he's coming to Jacob's house. Jacob's not going to his house. And after this, Jacob rose up from the ground, and his tears were running down his cheeks. And he said to his sons, rise up and take your sword and your bows and go forth into the field and seek whether you can find my son's body and bring it unto me that I may bury it. Seek also, I pray, among the beasts and hunt them, and that which shall come the first before you seize and bring it to me. Perhaps Yehovah will this day pity my affliction and prepare before you that which did tear my son in pieces and bring it unto me, and I will avenge the cause of my son. Is he asking Yehovah to give the correct beast to his sons to bring them back to him? Watch what happens. It's very interesting. And his sons did as their father had commanded them. And they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth into the field to hunt the beasts. And Jacob, still crying aloud and weeping and walking to and fro in the house and smiting his hands together, saying, Joseph, Bani, Joseph, Bani. And Jacob's seed went into the wilderness to seize the beasts. And behold, a wolf came before them, and they seized him and brought him back to their father. And they said to him, this is the first we have found, and we have brought him unto thee as thou didst command us. And thy son's body we could not find. And Jacob took the beast from the hands of his sons. This is a wild wolf. This is a female wolf. And he cried out with a loud voice, weeping in a weeping voice, a loud and weeping voice, holding the beast in his hands. And he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast. Why didst thou devour my son Joseph? And how didst thou have no fear of thee, Elohim of the earth, thee, Elohim of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Joseph? You didn't fear either one of us. And thou didst devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence and did thereby render me culpable on his account. Therefore, Elohim will require him that is persecuted. He still believes that he is culpable for Joseph's death. And Yehovah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words. And it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him. This is a talking wolf. As Elohim liveth, who created us in the earth, and as thy soul liveth, my Lord, Adonai, my master. This is the wolf talking to Jacob, calling him master, my master. I did not see thy son, neither did I tear him to pieces. But from a distant land I came to seek my son, who went from me this day, and I know not whether he is living or dead. And I came this day unto the field to seek my son, and your sons found me and seized me and increased my grief. and have this day brought me before thee. And I have now spoken all my words to thee. And now, therefore, O Son of Man, I am in thy hands. Do unto me this day as it may seem good in thy sight. But by my life, but by the life of Elohim. Look at that. By the life of Elohim. This is almost like swearing in Yehovah's name. By the life of Elohim, who created me. I did not see thy son, nor did I tear him to pieces. Neither has the flesh of a man entered my mouth all the days of my life. And when Jacob heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished. Yeah, I'll bet. And sent forth the beast from his hands, and she went her way. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping for Joseph day after day, and he mourned for his son many days. I know when I lost my family, there wasn't a day when I thought of my kids, I thought of my woman, that I didn't break down in tears, weeping. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. It went on for 2 years. Grief takes a long time. Now we're going to change back again to the Ishmaelites. And Ishmaelite seed who had bought Joseph from the Midianites, who had bought him from his brethren, went to Egypt. This is all putting it back in perspective. The Ishmaelites bought him from the Midianites, who bought him from the brethren. Went to Egypt with Joseph. And they came to the borders of Egypt. When they came near unto Egypt, they met 4 men. Medan's sons of Medan. Medan's seed is what they are. Medan's seed. Who is Medan? Look at it. Here's Medan. Abraham again took a woman, and her name was Keturah. And she bore him Zimran, Joktan, Medan, third born of Keturah, and Midian, fourth born of Keturah. So we got Midian, Abraham's seed. We've got Ishmaelites, Abraham's seed through Hagar. And now we've got Medan, Abraham's seed through Keturah again. Look what it says. Sons of Medan, the son of Abraham, who had gone forth from the land of Egypt on their journey. They're leaving Egypt as the Ishmaelites are coming to Egypt. And the Ishmaelites said unto them, do you desire to purchase this slave from us? And they said, deliver him over to us. And they delivered Joseph to them. And they beheld him that he was very comely youth. And they purchased him, look at that, for 20 shekels. They didn't make a profit on Joseph. They broke even. Interesting. And the Ishmaelites continued in their journey to Egypt. And the Medanim, this is Medan's seed, men who are Medanim, also returned that day to Egypt. And the Midianim said to each other, behold, we heard that Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, seeketh a good servant who shall stand before him to attend him, and to make him overseer over his house and all belonging to him. We were told in Torah that he was sold to the Midianites. He was sold to the Medanim, the seed of Medan. And therefore, come, let us sell him to him for what we may desire, if he be able to give unto us which we shall require of him. And the Midianim went and came to the house of Potiphar. And they said unto him, we have heard that thou seekest a good servant to attend thee. Behold, we have a servant that will please thee. If thou canst give unto us that which we may desire, we will sell him unto thee. Potiphar said, bring him before me, and I will see him. And if he please me, I will give unto you that which you require of him. And the Midianim went and brought Joseph and placed him before Potiphar. And he saw him, and he pleased him exceedingly. And Potiphar said unto them, tell me what you require of this youth. Look at what they require. And they said, 400 pieces of silver. What is that? Bought him for 20, they're going to sell him for 400. 2,000% profit, something like that. We shall desire for him. We desire for him. And Potiphar said, I will give it to you if you bring me a record of his sale to you, and will tell me his history, for perhaps he may be stolen for this youth is neither a slave nor a son of a slave. But I observe in him the appearance of a goodly and handsome person. And the Midianim went and brought unto him the Ishmaelites, who had sold him to them. And they told him, saying, he is a slave. This is the Ishmaelites. They went and got the Ishmaelites, brought him back to Potiphar. He's a slave, and we sold him to them. Didn't really talk about his origins, where they got him from, but apparently that was okay with Potiphar. And Potiphar heard the words of the Ishmaelites in his giving the silver unto the Midianim. And the Midianim took the silver and went on their journey, and the Ishmaelites also returned home. And that is the end of our story for today. Next week, we're going to talk about Judah. So interesting that we're talking about Judah now. Remember, when Reuben sinned against his father by taking his father's woman, he had the birthright, the kingship, and the priesthood taken from him. The kingship went to Judah. Judah's taken a prominent role. We're going to see Judah a lot in the future. The birthright went to Joseph. Oh, Joseph is gone. Is somebody else going to get the birthright? Never seems to happen. And the priesthood went to Levi. Isn't that interesting? When they go to Egypt, we're going to see that it's the Levites who don't work for Pharaoh. You know what? There's a lot of people that didn't take the injunction. They're not going to be ruled by Pharaoh. The Levites refused to do that. They found a way to make their own way in the land of Egypt. Oh, we have so much to learn. How long were we really in Egypt? Everybody's going to tell you 430 years. No, wrong. We say that because we don't know and we haven't taken the time to figure it out. I can show you and I'll teach you. Not going to happen today or next week or the week after that. But stay with me. We're going to find some new insights every time we go to Torah. Well, I hope this blessed you. It blessed me. Oh, the grief. I understand that so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for coming. Bye now.